dimensions. A time to celebrate, empower, inspire, and equip creatives with thought-provoking interviews and up-to-date information.
Welcome once again to Unleash Ur Cre8tivity, the show where we explore creativity in its many dimensions. And when I say many dimensions, I truly mean many dimensions, whether it's your hobby, your craft, your skill, your passion, your entrepreneurial hat, whatever it is. I found out on my journey that creativity is embedded in so many ways. Apart from the convention where we talk about creativity, we think it's just about our hands, but it's very broad and it's very wide. And I'm on a journey of learning, and every time I come up with a new guest, it is a new learning for me. So I'm really excited today because, again, I've been pushing barriers, I've been pushing boundaries. You all know that I'm a creative. I like to innovate, and sometimes I'm not ashamed to say I do it on the go. So today is going to be one of those days that I'm going to do it on the go because I love it. It's not the regular interview, it's a conversational interview. So we're in a very relaxed state. Well, I'm nervous, but my guest obviously is relaxed. But hey, let's see how we go. There are 4 things I normally say, which I would love to say because I know my listeners will be wondering, why have I not said it? So it's a show where we showcase creativity, we breathe it, we live it, we embrace it, and we celebrate. And that's the bit that really gets me because it gives me an opportunity to celebrate my guest, to celebrate what they've done, to celebrate my listeners who will be listening in because they will be learning and gleaning. And trust me, today we definitely are. Now, who is my guest today and what are we going to be doing and where are we going to be going? I can guarantee you that I'm trying something new today and we're going to be going in a dimension as led. So we'll see how conversation takes us. But I would like, first of all, to introduce my guest. I'm going to introduce him by pronouncing the name that I think I can pronounce. And one of my questions I'm going to be asking him is, how does he pronounce the other word? And what does it mean? So, but before I do that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him. I was thinking in my head, should I do the condensed version, which I found on LinkedIn, or should I do the long version? So I'm just going to give you a little synopsis. But the beauty of it is that as we go along, we're going to find out more about him. I think you will enjoy hearing how those things came to play when we start talking about him. So my guest is Dr. Joybert. He helps build and monetize thought leaders. His attention and credibility for global authorities through his signature framework. So he's a 7 times founder, a 7 times author, a 5 times LinkedIn top voice person, and he has traveled over 20 nations to speak. Now, the number of global awards that he has banked are unbelievable and significant. But like I always say, it's not really about the award. It's what's behind the scene that created the award in the first place. So we're going to be gleaning off that. But I use that as a taster because we might not be able to fit that ray of it in today. He has a doctorate in business management, specializing in entrepreneurship and investment. He's got an MBA in human resources management, and he has an array of certifications. So on that note, I would like to welcome to my show, Unleash Ur Cre8tivity.
Thank you so much, Omosola, and thank you for the incredible welcome. Sometimes we begin to wonder if they are talking about you, but here we are, and it's so good to chit chat with you and, of course, to share a couple of thoughts with you and your amazing listeners.
Thank you. So my first question, delving into it, your second name, I even went into the phonology. I said, no, don't massacre the name. I will ask you politely to pronounce your name and actually tell me, what does your name mean?
My name, Javnyuy. The best way to pronounce Javnyuy is to pronounce the Nyuy as Nui, Javnyuy. Javnyuy, it becomes easier for a lot of people who are not from my tribe. It's a very special name to me, and I love it. I love it when people call me Javnyuy more than even Joybert because it's a very special name. And Javnyuy means God shares or God is sharing. So I can say that God shares creativity, God shares blessings, God shares good things, and God is always sharing. So it depends the statement and the scenario and the mode that you are in, but it talks about God and sharing something that is good. So God shares creativity, God shares blessings, God shares good things, God shares grace, God shares favor. Anything good that comes from God, it means God shares. Yeah. And yes, I'm from Cameroon and I'm based in Cameroon, although I get to travel a lot. And of course, the most beautiful thing about a Cameroonian and grew up in Cameroon. I think it's my tribe. We come from the tribe known as the Nsot people. I love being Nsot man. I love being from my tribe. I love my culture a lot, and that speaks a lot about us and me as a person. Of course, Cameroon is a very beautiful, beautiful country. Due to my work, I've had the privilege to travel cities and villages and different regions, and I've met so many amazing people, experienced different cultures. We have almost 250 plus tribes, and they speak different languages with different dishes and different cultures that you get to experience in Cameroon. It's fondly called African in miniature because there is a bit of Africa in Cameroon that you will experience. If you'll see a bit of Nigeria in Cameroon, a bit of South Africa, a bit of Kenya, a bit of Tanzania. That's why it's called African in miniature, because it is so blessed with diverse perspective of Africa across the 10 regions of the country, or what some people may call 10 states or 10 provinces, depending on where you come from. Yeah.
Fantastic, good. And people that know and listen to my show, they kind of know that I like to do a little bit of research, and it gave me an opportunity to become more affiliated with Cameroon, about the fact that you've got loads of lovely beaches, mountains. It's a
Absolutely.
tourist attraction as well. I hadn't
Yeah.
had it on my radar, but I do now. So at some point, who knows? I'm semi-tourist now.
Absolutely.
Now, there's something I picked up in your bio, and I'm going to quote it. It says, from kidnapping attempts to a gunpoint on my face, seeking refuge amidst gunfire, I have stared death in the eyes, yet God preserved me. And I think that is in line with your name in some way, because he knew you had a lot to share. That's my take on that. My question to you is, how has what you've been through, how has that shaped your perspective and approach, your worldview generally?
I have grown with my journey, and especially with my relationship with God, that I have come to a place where instead of complaining about the things that have happened to me, I have seen them as a strong reason why God permitted me to go through those things, because of the work I do. And the work I do as a speaker, as a trainer, as a consultant, as a coach, I see it as a calling, not as a profession, not as a job per se. When I switch the perspective of looking at everything that I do, even being on this interview to you, to me is part of my call and my ministry, right? And when I switched seeing my life like that, I started appreciating why God permitted me to go through the things I went through. And I'll tell you why I started answering your question from this perspective. You see, I was born out of wedlock. So it means I don't know my dad, and I had a very difficult childhood. My single mom could barely see me off through school. I started sponsoring myself through school in high school per se. And since then, I have seen myself through education. And in Africa, we don't have students loan. There was a time at the age of 18, 17, I was working 3 jobs a day: car wash, commercial motor riding, working in a bakery, working in a cyber cafe, just to raise school fees for myself and all of that at a very tender age, because my mom instilled in me the power of education. And that is why, despite not being at home and being on my own, I always understood that I have to get myself through school, come rain, come sun. So with that difficult life, almost living on the street, I remember a time when I left my hometown to Bamenda, is the largest city in the northwest region of Cameroon, to go further my education and just see what I can make out of my life. When I left my town, it's like leaving, your village to a city. When I left, there was nobody waiting for me in the city at that time. I was going by faith. The first 7 days in Bamenda, I lived in 7 different houses, where I will go to the commercial motor park. When I hear a young man who is a commercial motorbike rider speaking my local language, I will go to you and tell you, hey man, I just came back from the village. I'm looking for my auntie. I cannot find my auntie, and I need where to sleep. So for the first 7 days of my life in Bamenda, I slept in 7 different houses with total strangers. And then the process started. I started doing some odd jobs, working in building construction sites and car washes and bakeries and packaging bread and all of that, to raise some money for my school fees. And my journey started like that. And there was a time where I did direct sales where you move from door to door and you begin to sell all these groceries and different things to people. My life picked up from there. And of course, the incident you spoke about, if you read a lot about Cameroon now, you will know that in the English part of Cameroon, there is a civil crisis, if I may call it that way, going on, that negatively thousands have been killed, thousands have been wounded so far. I have lost friends, I've lost family members, and so on, due to the crisis between the armed groups, or what they call the separatist fighters, and of course the government. And within that time, I was in the Northwest region in the heart of the crisis at the time. I left my home. I have lost everything twice in my life, like lost everything I've worked for twice. When I left my town where I was born, I left at 2 a.m. in the night because I got information that I was being kidnapped that night. And I left at 2 a.m. and I've never gone back to my hometown since 2018 till now. And then the gunshots, I've been in places where, there are gunshots passing. You have to lie on the floor so that a stray bullet should not hit you because of the crisis. Now, all of these scenarios in my life, just giving you a synopsis, to me as a person, I am in a business where when people reached out to me, they are reaching out to me to tell me about their problems. Consultants solve problems. Coaches solve problems. When you're training a group of people, you're training in a corporate setting, you're training to solve a problem. If I'm asked to speak in a summit, in a conference, the organizer or the convener has identified a problem and their conference or summit is a solution to that problem. So I evolve and I live solving problems for other people. And I strongly believe that the way God raised me, He raised me to develop the thick skin, the mindset, the capacity, the emotional intelligence, and all of these experiences to be in that place where no matter the problem you tell me, I have the capacity to receive your problem, understand where you're coming from, and not solve your problem from the place of emotions, but from the place of reasoning, discernment, revelation and understanding, and also give you hope, and also be in a place where I can be able to provide you counsel and guide and assure you that where you are is not to define you, it's not to kill you, it's not to destroy you, but there are better possibilities ahead of you. So everything I've gone through, I think God was preparing me for the greater mandate and the greater work that He prepared for me, especially in the marketplace and of course in the ministry that I do. So everything shaped me to who I am now, and I think to who I will still become in the journey that God has designed for me ahead.
Wow, that is really, really power packed. Because sometimes what I also do is that I ask the question, even though you've already answered the question, so that my listeners can also reflect in the answer within the question that you've already given. And one of the questions that I was going to ask, and if you want, you can still shed a bit more light of that, is about the word resilience. I look at resilience as something that you've proven to me that resilience is not something that you acquire. It's not something that you acquire. I am resilient.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that you work through. It's something that you are tested and tried with in order for you to actually say, I have resilience.
Absolutely.
It's not something you can buy.
Absolutely.
So you would say that this journey has built in you resilience.
I always fondly say that where I am in my life right now, there is no amount of rejection that can make me back down. There is no amount of no's that I can receive from anybody that will make me stop what I'm called to do or what I'm destined to do. And I always say that you don't read about courage and you become courageous. You don't read about resilience and you become resilient. It is what you go through and the things that you face as a person that makes you courageous and makes you resilient. In one of my books, I said that one of the best things that happened to me as an entrepreneur is that at the early stage of my life, I think that was immediately after high school, I did what they call direct sales, where you move door to door and you begin to sell perfumes, you begin to sell all these home supplies and kitchen supplies and all of that. Now, imagine this perspective. Imagine leaving your home at 8 a.m. and you knock door to door, on average 100 to 150 doors from 8 a.m. to about 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and nobody buys a product for a dollar. That means you get no's and rejections from almost 200 people from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. almost every single day. Now, with the kind of, I always say that I have so failed in my life that I have experience at failing that there is no amount of failure that scares me. And that has trained me to develop certain things and attributes about entrepreneurship and being a leader that no teaching can give me, no book can teach me, because I have gone through them. In a couple of years ago, I think 2016, I developed a word known as bounce back ability. It's a very popular word in Cameroon and where I've spoken, bounce back ability. I call it the concept of bounce back ability. And I define it as coming to a place and a spot in your journey where you have made up your mind that no matter what happens to you, everything is permitted to happen to you, but you are not permitted to give up. If you fail 10 times, you will bounce back. If you fail 100 times, you will bounce back. So you need to have the mindset and the attitude of bounce back ability. So I combine a couple of words, bouncing back and ability together, because I learned in my journey at that time that if I keep on bouncing back, if I keep on having that ability of bouncing back, I will end up winning, because quitters never win and winners never quit. So if you keep going, you will end up winning. Even though you may be doing it, if you are listening to me right now and you feel you are getting it wrong, if you keep on going, you will get it right, because you will learn, you will unlearn, and you will relearn, and you will adapt. And people who unlearn, relearn, and learn and adapt are people who kept on going and kept on seeking better ways to do it. And that is why resilience is critical in the journey of anybody who made it. In the midst of the pandemic, I spent time reading the history of the top 100 billionaires in the world. I was trying to understand their mindset, their concept, and where they are coming from. And when you read the history of the top 100 billionaires in the world, there is one thing you will see: they have failed in many projects. They have failed launching many products. They have been castigated, they have been rejected, and of course, they have messed up even in their personal lives, but yet they are still where they are today. One thing that they have is this pillar of resilience and the ability to keep on going even when others are writing them off. One thing that my journey has taught me is this consecration of resilience. To me, it's not just a word, it's a way of life. It's one of my critical core values in everything I do. Because till today, I will still face difficulties and challenges, and I need to remind myself, remember that one of your secret core values is for you to keep on pushing forward no matter what life throws at you.
Amazing.
You are listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola, showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.
And if you are just joining, this is Unleash Your Creativity. Over the past year, and I have interviewed 30 people under the platform of this show. And one thing we've done is that we've talked about people's skills, we've talked about people's, maybe their hobby, their passion. But one thing I quickly identified when I looked at your bio, when I looked at what you've done, is that we needed to talk about the ingredient, the missing piece that actually makes the business stand. Because as much as I do what I do, at the core of it is to either build people in that area of business through case studies of other people. But we can hear all the things that they've done, but the underlay, the foundation is really what we are addressing today. And you are touching on the core. And again, you've mentioned another key word that I wanted to talk about, which you've roped into your conversation, and that was mindset. It was mindset and reflection, because I am balancing what you've been through and where you are now. There are a lot of people who may not even have been through a dot of what you've been through that we've mentioned, but the mindset has not shifted in order for them to be able to move from the incident. So they're living constantly in the past, even though they're in the present, and they're taking that also into their future. So this conversation is very crucial. Is there anything else you want to add that influenced your mindset? When did you actually realize that you had a mindset shift?
There's a lot of talk about mindset, and many at times people can feel that it's just talk. But when it comes to the human race and our journey as a people, the conversation about mindset will keep on happening because our minds are so powerful, our minds are so incredible. What I don't know what God was thinking when He created the mind, but God definitely had a very, very intentional, purpose and plan for why He gave humans the mind. And I always fondly say that God did not end creation in Genesis chapter 1. God extended creation by giving man the mind so that we can continue creating. You see, Facebook was not in Genesis chapter 1, but it was in a man, right? Computers were not in Genesis chapter 1, but they were in a man. So God extended that in our minds, just giving us an excerpt of the power, you see, of the mind. And the mind on its own, without refining, cannot do anything. You see, every single one of us, every single one of us, even a young man right now in my village where when I was growing up, we used to see a car just once a month, and we did not have electricity even till now in my village. A young man in my village right now is heavily gifted. A young man in my village right now is heavily talented. A young man in my village right now has a great mind. But until that mind is refined, until that young man refines and enhance that mind and become, right? The Bible talks about the renewing of the mind because God knew that the mind as it is just a raw material and it needs some refining. And that is why in the journey of life, when your mindset becomes, manifestation becomes easy. The challenge for many people is that they want to manifest without becoming in their mind. Linking back to faith, I think one of the biggest things and the biggest blessings that Christians and believers can enjoy when it comes to their journey with the Lord is the refining of their minds. Because God, by His Spirit, will begin to tell you and expose you and give you extra revelation to understand your true capabilities of who you are in Christ Jesus, right? And that the first message that Jesus was preaching was repent, which means turn. Let there be a change. Become greater than who you are right now. Instead of focusing on food and what you will wear and what you will eat, I want to give you the kingdom. I want to give you something higher, something bigger, something more powerful, something that will be transgenerational in whatever that you're doing. And that start first with the mind. And my faith greatly, I strongly believe that if I was not a believer, I think I would have given up in life long ago because of the things that I have gone through. But when I begin to see who I am in Christ and who I am destined to be, and the works that God is doing through me, even in the midst of every crisis, I begin to see that there is something greater. For example, there are things that I used to say 15 years ago with my friends that I didn't know how they would happen, but I would just find myself saying it. And I know that it was the Holy Spirit speaking through me. You can call it the spirit of prophecy for those who are Christians. I remember years ago, I did not have a passport. I was just a young man in a semi-urban area in town called Kumbu. But I was telling my friends that because I used to gather young people in my church, I would talk to them and teach them. I didn't know what I was talking about per se. I have never traveled out of my village at the time, right? I've never even gone to my capital city at the time. But I would tell my friends that, you see what I'm doing today? I will travel the world and speak to people. I didn't know why I was saying that, but I used to prophesy that, I used to say that. And I believe that I could not say that if I was just, an average person. But that possibility and that future was revealed to me by the Spirit. And when you have the Holy Spirit, there is a greater kind of revelation and understanding that He begins to give you about the life you are destined to live. The Bible talks about beforehand, God designed us unto good works. So there are certain good works that we have been designed for that we have not yet entered, we are not yet manifesting, that we need to understand those things. So my faith played a big role in who I am and in who I am becoming and in the kind of mindset that I am having. And the scriptures, begins to, when you begin to read the scriptures and spend some time, you begin to see the character of God concerning you and his agenda concerning you. And it will challenge you not to define yourself based on what you are seeing now, but to define yourself based on the future possibilities that God designed and he instituted into your life and as part of your destiny.
Wow. When I was talking about your bio, because we had a little conversation before we went on air, I did say that I found out that you are an ordained minister. That is sifting through our conversation. And we're going to be talking more about that because you've really, honestly, it's almost like you're just looking at my notes or my thoughts and it's aligning. Conversation is aligning. So when we now start talking about the business, when we start talking about your accolades, when we start talking about your books, it will make sense because what I'm doing here is building a foundation for us in order for people who are either in it, who are on a journey, or who want to aspire beyond that. They have a foundation, which is sometimes missed out of the conversation to get to where they're going. Because you've mentioned a few things that the challenges are the things that actually has kept you. You've talked about the time you spent reading about the billionaires and how many times they failed. Sometimes these things are not taught. Once you get things wrong, they think, well, I'm on the wrong path. So that is why, for me, this conversation is really, really crucial and really important. That's why I said today, I'm taking a whole different dimension to it. I'm testing it out, and I know that I'm on the right path. And reflection, I'm going to put two things together. Because when I was listening, actually, I went to school just listening. I've signed up to your newsletter. Very, very, very interesting information there. And you talked about the importance of the brain. And you linked it to self-discipline. And I'm also linking that to reflection, because in a way, the three of them are intertwined. I mean, without the brain, without the thought, without the mindset, we really can't do much. How do you see the importance of the brain in line of us actually fulfilling destiny, in line of us just being the very best version of ourselves?
You see, everything stems from the brain. And one of my funny things I always say is that the only part of your body that the more you use it becomes more powerful and more valuable is your brain, right? Every other part of your body really gets old. And I believe that your brain, the more you get older, it becomes more finer. It becomes more refined, more powerful, more incredible, more unique, more multidimensional. And the brain really dictates wherever we are going, right? And for believers, when you pray, you need the brain to be that platform that interprets what you are receiving from the Holy Spirit, from God, for you to implement it in the physical manifestation as a person. So the quality of your brain, the quality of your mind, and your ability to reflect is critical. One of the things I believe is that somebody who has a very negative mindset or a negative way of looking at life can hardly hear from the Holy Spirit, right? That's my point of view. It's not a doctrine, okay? What I'm just trying to establish the power of having the right mindset, making sure that you work on your brain, and of course, you are able to reflect on it properly. And again, the brain on its own is just a tool, and we need to use it. A tool that is not being used cannot create value. A tool that is not being refined and developed cannot adapt. And the brain is the same way. One of the best things that I believe a human being can understand is the things that they can do on a daily basis to keep on refining their brain. I think it's very important. I have a mentorship community. I always tell them, one of the things that we have as a tradition is what have you inserted in your daily routine that the goal of that thing is to challenge your brain on a daily basis. Because the more that your brain expands, the more your brain grows in terms of quality, in terms of processing, in terms of understanding, in terms of dictating and understanding different patterns, the more powerful, the more influential, the more relevant, the more impactful that you are. Because the quality of your brain literally determines the quality of your life. Even God can be stranded, God can be limited when your brain is limited. That is said in the book of Psalms.
Wow.
The children of Israel limited the great one, right? So your brain is really critical in everything. If you have the right brain, they put you in any country, you will survive, you will thrive. Because it is not a nation that makes people. It is the brain of the people that makes the nation. I always say that nations are not made up of mountains and trees and roads and stones and all of these things. No, nations are made up of people and the quality of the brains that these people have. So it's the same for those who we are Africans and we like to migrate a lot to better countries. But I always tell people that many Africans have just transferred and transported their bodies from their home countries to developed countries, but their brains are not developed, right? So we need to work on that and improve that so that we can take advantage, and not only taking advantage and being consumers, because the difference between a consumer and a producer is the quality of their brain. That's a fact. The difference between somebody who only consumes and lives an average life and is a mediocre and is just a lives from paycheck to paycheck, and the person who owns the company and pays salary and is an active player in the marketplace, the major difference is the quality of their brain. It's how they have refined their brain and the different perspectives that their brain can pick up and work on and expand, and of course use it to serve humanity.
Wow. And I think you've just literally given the link between the importance of the brain and self discipline, because the brain can't function to the maximum potential if you don't discipline
Mhm.
yourself, if you don't do the right things that you're talking
Yeah,
about, if you don't feed it right, if you don't expand it. Because I was looking, what is the connection?
absolutely.
What is your connection between brain and discipline? But from that
Mhm.
conversation there, you've literally told me and telling my listeners that if you don't use it, as they say, you lose it. So you need self discipline in order for you to be able to take
Yeah,
it to the next level, in order for it to be functional to its maximum. And that leads me
yeah.
really nicely into continuation of self discipline and self mastery. Because all of these are now, I think, our next conversation would, all these tools now would allow what you say to us in terms of your entrepreneurial journey. I think it will give it a better foundation and a better take home for people to listen to, because I'm looking at
Mhm.
self mastery, and I'm looking at it from the standpoint that it has been self mastery that has taken you to where you are right now. How important is self mastery? What does self mastery mean to you? And what tips can you give us about how to actually self master?
You are listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola, showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.
Self mastery is one of those things that, especially in this dispensation, I believe many of us or everybody should get it right. We live in a dispensation where people now undermine themselves and they try to copy and they try to compete. Anytime you try to copy only and try to compete, you have brought yourself low to the same level of that person and you're undermining your own potentials and your own possibilities. Self mastery puts you in that place where you build capacity to bring your individuality, your originality, and your uniqueness to the marketplace and to the society. The people who have disrupted
Wow.
the world and the people who have contributed to their various industries, they did not do that from the place of copy work or from the place of trying to fit in. They did that successfully from the place of tapping into their uniqueness and bringing out something that is different and is unique based on how they are wired. Your wiring is to your own advantage. In your wiring, in your individuality is your competitive advantage. In your wiring, in your individuality is your own innovation. In your wiring and individuality is your own creativity. When you don't master yourself as a person, actually you are robbing the society of something unique that only you can bring to the table. So, spending time to master yourself, master your mind, master how you think, master how you look at patterns, master how you understand the world, master how you communicate, master how you appreciate people, master everything about yourself, and be proud of who you are becoming and focus on increasing that mastery. Right? See, the biggest blessing that can happen to any human being is for you to understand who you were created to be, and work on increasing, advancing, accelerating all of that which you are bringing to the table. If you are unique at creating certain frameworks, the best thing that can happen to you is to amplify that which you can create. The best thing that can happen to somebody is to recognize that Omosola is good at this and I celebrate her, but I am good at this and I can bring this, and let's see how we can collaborate and create something better, but instead of competing with her. Self mastery reduces envy and jealousy. I can bet you, if you see somebody who truly have mastered his or herself, you would never find jealousy or envy in that person, because they will recognize your gifting, they will recognize your skill, they will acknowledge theirs and recognize theirs, and they will focus on how can we partner together and do something greater and create something that will bring greater transformation. And self mastery starts from you being comfortable that you are enough. Acknowledge and accept that you are enough. You are perfectly created. God created you and gave you every single infrastructure that you need to manifest the life you were created to manifest. Number two, you need to do some personal analysis. Spend some time and analyze your life. How do you think? How do you communicate? What are the vocabularies that excite you the most? When you look at your life in the last 10 years and 5 years, how have you behaved? What is your attitude? Spend time to do some self analysis and be happy of certain things that you pick out, because those are the things that define you. For example, let's say in the speaking industry, I will not bring any originality, any uniqueness on any platform if I try to, speak like a role model I admire or somebody I celebrate. I will just be a copycat, and it will be like, if you are coming to speak like this person, why? It is better we should go watch their YouTube channel than come listen to you, because you are trying to copy them, and we know where to find him. But you see, if I'm coming on your platform, I am bringing something that you have never seen, because I'm going to bring things from my perspective, from my originality, from how I've mastered myself, from my experiences. And that will bring some incredible value, because it will be something new, something different, and something transformational that will come to the table. And then the third thing about self mastery is that be willing to pay the price to master yourself and to grow. Because I always say that mastery will cost you. Mastery will cost you something. Progress will cost you something. It may cost you sleep. It may cost you how much you hang out with your friends. It may cost you Netflix. It may cost you social media. It may cost you how much you eat. It may cost you. Mastery will cost you. And this is a challenge for many people. We are not willing. We don't have the willing spirit to pay the price for mastery. And of course, as mastery is in different levels. There's self-mastery, industry mastery, skills mastery, career mastery. But anything mastery starting from self-mastery will cost you. You need to have the willing spirit to pay the price for mastery, because mastery is not cheap. Mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take you consistency and some pain and some hurt. But if you want a better self of you in the next 2 years, in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months, you should be comfortable and you should have the willing spirit to pay the price for mastery.
Wow. I mean, yes. And I may say that so that I have been listening. You were talking about how you would put your feet in a bucket of water so that you did not sleep, so that you could finish a task in one of your.
Exactly.
I'm thinking, oh my days. But again, what you're saying is that it has to cost you something. And I feel, again, having this conversation, and I'm hoping my listeners are taking this in, is that this conversation is foundational to whatever it is that you want to do and you want to be. And there are things that we don't
Absolutely.
always talk about. And it also takes me again nicely into where I'm going to talk a bit about your educational background, because you talked about mastery. And in order to master, it has to cost you something. And that is where personal
Mhm.
development. But before I talk about that, I just want to I've been so engrossed. I normally give lots of definitions. I haven't had time to give any today because I'm the student. So for me, one of the definitions I picked up that I enjoyed, it says self-mastery is the pursuit of personal excellence and is crucial for leadership and success in business. So it really summarized
Mhm.
what you've been saying. So we go straight now into personal development, because again, self mastery, it involves self development, and you have done that.
Mhm.
So I want to take you back. I'm going to go back and then forward again to say, in those days that you were knocking at people's doors, in those days where you were doing 3 to 4 different, 5 different jobs in order to survive, in order to study, to self-study, to develop and to grow yourself in the educational field. Was that where the love of business was born? Or how did that happen? Or did you look back? Did you reflect and say, wow, all the things I did then actually is what has made me now, or is what I give me? Or was it something you just knew that, you know what, I really want to go into this? What was the drive? And I'm talking about, I mean, before you went in to do your doctorate, you did your master's and you would have done your degree, but you were very lineal because everything you did was really focused on being the best version of yourself. And I'm going to rub one more thing in before you respond, because I learned from you about John Welsh, whose thought process was that you can either
Mhm.
be a number one or number two. There's no other option. So does that have
Yeah.
anything? I've asked multiple questions there. Has the earlier part of your life, did it inform how you went into the business? And is that something that engineered your thought of being, I'm going to be the best in this, so it's number one, at the most number two? What was the drive?
Yeah, I think that God orchestrated my interest for business very early on. I would say a lot of things so that we can understand it, because I think I am in business again because it's a calling and this is a mountain where God wants me to be. In the early part of my life, at a very young age in primary school, let's say between the ages of 9 and above, I started selling where my single mom will fry pop-off, what we call pop-off, flour and flour and all of that. And I'll carry on my head and begin to sell. And she will also do fried chicken and I will also sell on the street. So my journey to business started very early on, with 10 years or 9 and so on. And I grew up in the village where in the village, the only way you can get money is for you to do farming and then get your harvest and carry on your head and travel 3 to 4 hours to the nearest market in the nearest semi-urban town and sell there. So we used to what they call weekly markets. So I was introduced into business very early on where, for example, Gary, cassava flakes for those in the US and in the UK and so on, where you prepare cassava, grind it, fry Gary, and then carry on your head and go sell in another market, or do corn or do beans and go sell. And at that time too, my stepdad at the time used to also buy things, and there were others in the village too. And I started doing that. When you go to that town, you sell the farm produce. You now buy things that are not in the village and come back and sell in the village, right? Like kerosene, like Maggi, like bedding soaps, and of course laundry soaps, things like that. So I was into business very early on, but at that time it was just for survival. Let me say so. Then in secondary school, I was still doing business. Let's say maybe it was inside of me already, where I would buy snacks, sweet biscuits, all of these things, and sell in class. Sometimes teachers will run after me and seize it and pack it in their offices. I will still come and sell the next day, chewing gums and all of that. So my path was really orchestrated into business early on. In secondary school, in the Cameroon education system, when you are in secondary school, you get to a certain class, you need to choose a specialization, either grammar, sciences, or commercial education. So I did not think twice. I just picked commercial education because I already love commerce and business, mathematics and accounting and economics. So I just picked up and did accounting and all of those business subjects to high school, university. I did financial management and then MBA in human resource and then my doctorate in entrepreneurship and investment. But my experiences, my childhood experiences and so on. And I also believe that God orchestrated that to happen. Now, I want to link it to my call in ministry so you see why I believe and I know that it was a divine orchestration, because I did not really know that I will get into ministry as a minister. I grew up in the church. My mom raised me in the church. I was always in the youth group, in the boys' brigade, and youth meetings, and all of that. But I was comfortable at being an usher in church, helping the church, and being a church worker. But being a minister, I did not see myself like that until now the calling came. And when God was talking about my calling, He said, I took you through the route of the business world for a reason. So God took me first in my career journey, and a lot of things happened. We traveled into different countries and working with different governments, bodies, and institutions, and all of that. Before now, He called me because the ministry He had for me was unique, because my primary ministry is in the marketplace. So my ministry is this way. In the church, there are people in the church who are Christians, but they are not doing anything concrete to be active players in the economy. So God is not raising lazy Christians. God is not raising less competent Christians. So my ministry in the church, that's why I've partnered with churches. I've partnered with, even in my church, I get to organize business summit and economic summit and trainings and all of that so that we can raise Christians. I always say that Christians who are spiritually upright and professionally competent, who can run businesses and become corporate professionals. Then in the corporate world, in the marketplace, you see, many a times the church has been excluded from the economy and from the marketplace because they feel that we are just religious fanatics. But if I stand in a corporate room in a board setting and I can talk strategy, I can talk expansion, I can talk economic dominance, I can bring frameworks that can advance a company or even shift a whole economy, and I'm talking about Christ, they are going to understand me. So God was preparing me to that marketplace, to the people where I can be able to, minister the gospel of Jesus Christ to corporate professionals and to entrepreneurs. And that is what gave birth to the ministry that I head now, known as Professionals and Entrepreneurs Fellowship, where it's just a community of company owners, executives, CEOs, professionals, workers from different countries who are in that fellowship. And they can easily understand me because I speak their language. And I can understand them because I also speak their language. So God orchestrated my route in business from a very early age for His ultimate purpose, although I get to discover that purpose for myself a couple of years ago. So business, I did not just get into business because of my personal interest, but it was divinely orchestrated. And I'm happy that I saw that divine plan very early on and I aligned with it so that God can, advance the agenda. Billy Graham of blessed memory once said that the greatest revival will spring forth from the marketplace. You see, because God has a mission in the marketplace. There is something that God wants to do in the economic sector, in the political sector, in the industrial sector. And God is raising and preparing people. And He wants to raise infrastructures and platforms for what He wants to do as far as His agenda is concerned. So my business is not just business. To me, I am very conscious every single day that it's a calling. And when I'm addressing entrepreneurs and experts and professionals of any industry, I know that this is a calling. I may not mention Jesus Christ, but let my words, let my character, let my actions show that I represent somebody that is higher than me, who has principles and values that I must embody. And of course, I must convey and express those in the marketplace.
You are listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola. showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.
Amazing. And I think that was one of the things that actually, honestly, to be honest, I was shocked, because when I went to research and I was looking, and then I said, and you go, and yes, I'm an ordained minister. And I went, really? You know, so it excites me. It excites me because I love that I know that I have a background in business. I found my way there, and I know that there is a special place and a special call for believers. And I think there is that misunderstanding of how to marry the two together, especially when you hear the love of money is the root of all evil, when you hear some other things. So people move from one end to the other and say, let's abstain. So I think there has been an abstinence of it. So it gave me an excitement to ask the question, which you have. But again, as I said, I asked the question so that my listeners can take it on board, is that how do you blend your business world and your faith world? And you've also said that it's really about the fruits of the spirit. It's about how you present yourself. It's about the knowledge that you bring to the table, because nobody will shy away from knowledge. Everybody wants solutions. And if you've got the solution, it doesn't matter who you are, it's an open entry for you to, and that's why I listen to the people like John Maxwell, like Miles Monroe. They were able to infiltrate and be the best version of themselves and represent the marketplace in that way. And that was what drew me to you. Is there anything else that you really want to speak to that you think our listeners? I have people who listen that are believers. I have people who are not, but there is something in there that everybody can take away. How would you say our personal preferences and our business preference, how do we marry the two together? It could be faith, it could be anything. How do we align the two?
Yeah. Let me answer it this way. You only blend what you separate. You only bring together what you separate. And as a kingdom person, you are a kingdom person. You are a kingdom believer. You see, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a kingdom entrepreneur. If you're a professional, you're a kingdom professional. So it is one. There is no separation. The point is, we are the ones that separated it. God's intention is not for us to have our lives different as Christians and our businesses different. That's not God's intention. God's intentions is that we are his representatives in the marketplace. We are in the world, but we are not of the world, right? So we are trying to blend because we have separated that. Like you will hear some statements say, people will say, this is business. Let's focus on business. And when they're in church, right, they now focus on church. And that's why we have Christians who are only Christians on Sunday, but between Monday and Saturdays, they are not Christians. They are only Christians when they're in church, right? And that's why people talk about blending the two together. But if you have the consciousness that you are a kingdom person and a kingdom believer at all times, in the day, in the night, in meetings and not meetings, there is nothing to separate, right? I have given word of knowledge and prophecies in a professional setting, and I have rejected things because they don't align with my kingdom values. I told somebody talking about me that I needed to do something that is against my kingdom principles and kingdom values, because as a person there are pillars that God has given me, and he has told me that as long as your career and your business stands on these pillars, I will always be with you. So there is nothing on the surface of the earth by the help of the Holy Spirit, not even $1 billion, that will make me go against those pillars. And I always tell people, before you brought this opportunity, I was doing well. So don't feel as if I don't take this opportunity, I would die. No, I would not. I will still keep doing well. And the challenge also is that we have come to a place where we see our businesses, our careers, our jobs as our source. And then that's why we struggle to blend. But if you understand that God is your source, no matter the job you have, no matter the business you have, you are there because your original source is God. Every other thing will fall into place. So we should stop trying to separate what doesn't need separation. You are a kingdom entrepreneur, you are a kingdom professional, and from Monday to Sunday, you are a kingdom person. So when somebody talks to you and you talk back, let them hear a kingdom person talking. Let somebody feel blessed. Let somebody feel motivated. Let somebody just know that, when I talk to you, I get a different feeling. They may not understand why, but you understand that because you're a kingdom person, you bring the presence of God and you bring the fruits of the Spirit in that environment. You see, let somebody come to you and they say, that they are feeling sick and all of that. You tell them, don't worry, you'll be fine tomorrow. And you are the one who knows that in the night you will intercede for the healing of that person. We are the ones that separated it, but in the mind of God, God sees a priest and a king who has a job, and that job is not your source. He is your source, but you see that job is a platform for you to expand the kingdom and to bring his presence and his glory into that particular place. So for me, there is no separation. When in every business deal I get to, in every platform, whether Christian or non-Christian, I have spoken on different non-Christian platforms, government and private institutions alike. When I stand to speak, give a keynote address, to train, to do whatever I'm doing, you may not hear the word Bible or you may not hear the word Jesus and all of that. But I know that I am speaking on that platform as somebody powered by the Holy Spirit here in the name of the Lord under the light of his presence. And whatever I am doing is in the name of the Lord. You see that is a mindset. When we start having that, it will also become easy for us to really, really enjoy the backing of God. Because God is so real, his power is so real. But when we begin to bring the separation, you begin to see that, it's as if God is not with you on Monday to Saturday because you caused it. You separated him, you kept him in church on Sunday, and then you started life on Monday alone. Right? But when you know that Monday is another new day to serve the Lord in what he has called you to do, he backs you up. So whatever you do, the Bible says that the children of Israel did not conquer the promised land because they had the best weapons or the best swords. Amplified says they conquered the promised land because they had the hand of God upon them, they had the arm of God, and they had the light of his presence. When we separate God and try to do business separate or career different, we keep God aside, and there are spiritual resources that are not available unto us because we are not starting Monday in the name of the Lord. Because we have because spirituality is also about consciousness. You are doing business and you're conscious that this is business. If I need to cheat, I will cheat to succeed. And that is not godly. So you have kept God aside and you are willing to do anything to succeed in business. And the presence of God is not there. Let me tell you something. My life and my career journey is clearly the finger of God. Specifically the finger of God. Because the things I have experienced, and when God called me to ministry and was telling me why certain things happen, I now understood that I now see. Because the things that I have done at my young age, they are practically, I don't know a better way to put it, but they happen at a very fast pace that it can only be because there was a divine orchestration in that particular case. You see that? And because fortunately for me, I knew very early on that anywhere I go, Monday to Sunday, I am with God. And there is nothing, no business deal, no career opportunity that will compromise righteousness, will compromise the fear of God, will compromise the will of God that I will get involved in. I am not interested because if it is from God, I don't need to struggle to get it. It will effortlessly come to me because I am aligned to him. And when we have that oneness with him, we will always be led by his spirit and we will do that what he has called us to do. So let us stop trying to blend what God did not separate. Let us go to the marketplace. Every Monday to Saturday, you are a kingdom professional. Kingdom first, then the professional. Kingdom first, then the entrepreneur. When we have that mindset, we will effortlessly, and see, there are many things that Christians are praying for, which they are not supposed to pray for if they just align. I'm forgetting the scripture. The Bible says that for those whose hope is in the Lord, And those whose help is in the Lord will bless them and graciously favor them. It's not a prayer point. If you genuinely, authentically, your hope is in God from Monday to Saturday, you know that your help is in God from Monday to Saturday, there are certain blessings you don't need to pray for. There is a certain amount of favor that rests upon the works of your hands you are not supposed to pray for. They accompany your hope in God, and you are dependent on Him that your help is in the name of the Lord. I have seen it happen in my career, and I can give you multiple testimonies in my fellowship, which is purely business owners, CEOs and company owners and corporate workers, and they will tell you, they will share mind-blowing testimonies. I'll be wondering, is this how God is involved in careers and businesses? Yes, He is that involved. But you see that question you ask? It is the main reason why many have not enjoyed certain things of the kingdom, because they have separated it. We need to become one. I am going to work. I am working as a kingdom professional. There are some things I cannot go against. There are some things I cannot do, not because of my boss, not because I am afraid of company ethics, but because, first of all, the kingdom I represent does not permit it. Let me end with this quote that I wrote years ago. I said, until a person comes to a place in their life where God is their chairman, Jesus Christ their CEO, the Holy Spirit their strategic technical advisor, the angels their operations manager, and the Bible your operations manual, you will not go far in life. I just broke down a business structure
Oh my
concept
days.
as a business person. So I just came to a point in my life and I said, you know what, Joybert? Make God your chairman. In every company that makes sense, you will always see a board chairman. Number 2, let Jesus Christ be the chief executive officer of your life. Every company that makes sense has a CEO. Number 3, let the Holy Spirit be your daily strategic technical advisor. Every company that makes sense has consultants, has coaches, has advisors. Number 4, believe in the ministry of angels. The Bible says they are ministering spirits. The Bible says the Lord will send them to take charge of you. Allow the angels to be your operations officers. There are rooms that my names have been mentioned there. I don't know by who, by opportunities have come to me because somebody mentioned my name. I may not know who, but I know that angels through somebody mentioned my name in that room. So I take angels as my operation managers because the Bible says that they are ministering spirit unto us. Number 5, every company that makes sense has a standard operating procedure. So the Bible is my daily operating manual as a kingdom professional sent on earth. So my life, my career is not separated from who I am in Christ. My businesses are not separated from who I am in Christ. Let me go to a certain extent. Every single business I run pay tithe on its own before I pay my tithe as a person. That is how one it is. There's no separation. There is no separation of this business and its this. And if the business that have partners, when you're coming, I tell you first, in this profit, you need to understand that a part of it, 10% is God. We don't own 10%. You have to understand it and you have to be clear with that, and there's no negotiation about that. So there is no blending, there is no separation, it's one. And these are avenues that God is using to achieve His agenda and His purpose. And there are many who will listen to this and will not understand. But those who are in the kingdom will understand, because the Bible is very clear. There are certain mysteries of the kingdom that God only reveals to those who are of His kingdom. For me, I've taken time to explain because this is a part of passion for me as a ministry person. But we should take it a step higher and stop separating and understand that we are one. Monday to Sunday, you are a kingdom, Holy Ghost driven, powered entity sent by God to that job, to that business, and you have access to heavenly resources for you to advance God's agenda. And when you align with God and submit to Him and stop saying that business is business, career is career, church is church, then we are just religious people. We are not really believers who are representing God in everything that we do. Religious people talk about church. Believers talk about the agenda of God and the kingdom of God in all that they do.
You are listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola. showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.
Wow, wow. Well, I can see why God orchestrated. He orchestrated the alignment for you to pinpoint. By the way, I have a landing. We are going to land. But I can say to you that I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. And I'm so happy that I went with the flow. I did say at the beginning that I haven't done this before. And this is different. This is the first time. But I'm going to go with the flow. I did not, this is purely, and I just decided I was going to go with the flow. And for people who are listening, who wonder, wow, because people ask me the question, how did you meet this person? How did you meet that person? I would just say this was just divinely orchestrated, because you responded to my page. You did a one-liner which could have been easily missed. And I thought, that seems like a bait. Let's go check it out. And I'm glad that I did. Not your bait, but God's bait, because he shows up in different ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes in
Absolutely.
ways, we talk, you've made me go to church now. Gosh. But this solely reminds me of not looking at the noise around you and being focused. And that was what happened to Elijah and Elisha. I said, if you can remain focused and spot what I'm doing, you will be able to go to where I'm taking you. So that's the experience that I believe that I'm experiencing right now, because I was literally kind of like, okay, what's happening here? I want to land this for my listeners. And again, every word that I have taken, the words that I picked up from your bio. So that's why it's been an easy flow for me, and it's been an easy flow for you. So I want to ask this question, because again, you did there's some things in my head, I don't know how to articulate them, but they're just floating around. And one thing that I looked at when I said, how do I describe Dr. Joybert? I'm going to call you by your other name next time. How do I describe you? And honestly, the two words came to mind. And the two words were lion and lamb intertwined. And I say that because you preach with passion, you deliver with authority, and you could sense that fatherly, get up. And I use that to use the next two words for you to know that I have listened. You talked about discipline versus motivation, and you talked about procrastination, and I intertwine those three with the fact that you did your MBA in human resources. So you have a passion. You have a passion for people. And I thought, this is just me thinking aloud, and I say this conversation. If he wasn't a man of faith, he would be whipping people. But because of the love of God, because you have to sit up when I had to sit up when I was listening to your conversation. I'm like, wow, So those are the two words that I would use to describe you. Lamb and a lion. Jesus was both, and he's like, I'm going to whip you now, and at the same time, I'm going to love you. So you need to do what you need to do. Am I correct? I subscribed, I downloaded your stuff. Yes, and there was some whipping that was necessary there as well for me. So in terms of procrastination, you have a book, you shared your life and how you got into procrastination because I did my homework. Yes. I think it was discipline and motivation. You said one or the other, that you can't, motivation is not it. You need to be disciplined. And I'm like, okay, he's redefined my thinking around motivation doesn't cut it. And I literally had a paper where I was written all your quotes down. That was how I was going to do the interview. Say, this was your quote. How did this go? So you can see, I really have learned. So talk to us. I've really gleaned off you in terms of procrastination, in terms of discipline, in terms of motivation. What do you, to land this plane of this side, what do you want to share with my listeners? How can we embed that? So when we now start talking about your accomplishments, when we start talking about how you got to where you got to and what you're doing, people won't say you are lucky. Because you've done the work. Talk to me, please. Talk to our listeners about discipline, motivation, and procrastination.
Self-discipline and execution, motivation, and of course, procrastination. These are things that I have written a lot about, I have spoken a lot about, because I have seen the negative consequences of procrastination. I have also seen the blessings of execution. I have seen how motivation plays out. And I've also seen, how discipline or self-discipline plays out. I even have a book from chief procrastination officer to chief execution officer. There are some people that they have become chief procrastinating officers over their life. They can procrastinate. And one of my saying is that many people have shifted their breakthroughs a couple of years ago. I always give an example that there are some people listening to me right now. You are supposed to break through and enter a new level of your manifestation in 2020. But because of your too much procrastination in 2018 and 17 and 16, you have shifted your own breakthrough from 2020 to 2025. And if you keep on procrastinating, you will shift certain things. There are many people that they were supposed to make their first maybe £1 million, $1 million, £1 million, last year, but they are not able to make it again last year because they procrastinated certain execution and certain tasks and certain habits that stopped them from manifesting that. I will answer your question by giving you something I did in 2021. I went to my mentorship community and I said, if you have been running a business for more than 2 years and you have never saved your first 1 million francs, it was a community of mostly Cameroonians at the time, and you have not made your first 1 million as a young person, but you are in business for more than 2 years, indicates a good number indicates, and I selected 8 of them. And I said between January 2021 and December, the goal is that all of you must make your first 1 million francs saved, but living well, taking care of your bills, but you must have extra million francs saved. Now, what did I change? The main thing I changed in their lives was execution. That's the main thing I changed. The first thing we started doing was what I call morning school. Morning school means that every day for the first 35 days of that program, everybody wakes up at 3:30 a.m. and I coach you guys from 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. And from 4:30 to 5:30, you plan your day. And your planning day is for you to focus on action plans. Right? Now, why did I bring in the morning school for 3:30 a.m. in the morning? Because there are certain things that if you master how to conquer what can control your will, there are certain things you will achieve in life easily. The enjoyment of sleep control your will. Alcohol control your will. That's when the Bible says, do not be drunk with wine, but be drunk with the Spirit. It's not the sin to drink alcohol. It's not in the Bible that it's a sin. But I don't drink alcohol at all. At any form, I don't drink it at all. Why? Because very early on, I discovered that anything that can control your will is dangerous for you. So immediately you take alcohol and you are drunk, it starts controlling you. You are no longer in charge of your will. And that's dangerous for you as a human being. So you're going to mess up. If there are certain habits that you do or certain addictions that you do, for example, there are many human beings now on earth that social media is controlling their will. There are many people that they don't have the capacity now to switch off the Wi-Fi. They don't have that capacity now. They cannot. They are so addicted to being online that their phone and being online now control their will. And that's dangerous for them when it comes to manifestation of destiny. So I did this and I introduced reading plans. I introduced when they should go to bed. I even introduced certain things that they must do when it comes to waking up and going to bed. For example, I always tell people, if you wake up from bed automatically and you just jump into your daily routine and begin to do certain things, it's not good for you. One of the best things that can happen to you when you wake up from bed is for you to do anything that will amplify the quality of your mind and the quality of your heart. For example, you can read a book, you can pray, you can jump on, if like in that community, the first thing everybody would do is they jump on a coaching call with me. And I will coach them on certain things and all of that. And you start your day with something inspiring. You start your day with something that will cause a shift in your mind. The way you're going to execute for the rest of the day will be different. Personally, for me, I don't touch my phone when I wake up until after 2 hours. That's my personal daily routine. I don't go online when I wake up until I have done my morning routine, which sums up to 2 hours every morning. So I don't care what is happening online. It's a problem. Your emergency online is not my emergency, right? And I always say that if it's something about me, God will take care of it because the morning routine includes Him. And the way you go to bed is important. I always feel very sorry if the last thing you do going to bed is switching off a television or your Wi-Fi. I feel sorry for you because you go to bed with your mind, which is one of your greatest assets, it has been distorted. Before I go to bed, I go offline 1 hour before my bedtime, sometimes 2 hours. The last thing I should see going to bed should not be Facebook, should not be WhatsApp, should not be Instagram. It should be something that will shift my destiny. I do what I call destiny shifting activities before going to bed. So I must pray, I must read the scriptures, and I must read a book. Now, so the mindset I'm going with to bed is not the same mindset like an average human being. So if I don't watch TV 2 hours before bedtime, I am not on social media 2 hours before bedtime, and I do only quality, impactful, destiny shifting activities. Now imagine the quality of my mind if I do it just for 30 days. The way I think, the way I look at life, and the way I execute is totally different. And the way I go to bed automatically affects the way I wake up. It affects the quality of my mind, the way I wake up. These routines I instituted in that team. The last thing was accountability. I told everybody at the end of each day, you must submit to me what you have achieved for that day and where you failed. Guess what? Before October 2021, all the 8 individuals have saved their first 1 million and are doing well. 8 people become millionaires. I did not give them money. I did not give them anything. The only thing I changed was their routine, challenged their hard work and dedication, and gave them more strategies and more wisdom during the daily coaching and the weekly coaching that we were doing. Execution came in. Now, the 3 a.m. also affects self-discipline. Now, waking up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., motivation cannot do that. A motivated person cannot wake up from bed at 5 a.m. every day for the whole year, because every morning your bed will be sweeter and your blanket will be sweeter every single morning. So motivation cannot conquer the sweetness of sleep and the beauty of your bed. It takes you operating from a higher level, which is self-discipline, massive self-discipline, where you make up your mind. I don't care how sweet. With self-discipline, you don't do things based on how you feel. With motivation, you do things based on how you feel. So the day you are not motivated, what happens? You don't do those things that are important to your destiny. But with self-discipline, how you feel does not matter. There are things that you must do because they are in your routine and you operate from self-discipline. There are certain things that motivated people can never achieve. But I can tell you, as a self-disciplined person, there are certain things that you will achieve, and people will look at you and begin to wonder. You see, you cannot write and publish 8 books being motivated. I have 20 other manuscripts of books that are not yet published. You cannot do things like that for motivation. It takes self-discipline. You see, there are many people that have started their master's degree and their doctorate degree and they have given up because you don't do things like MBA and doctorate degree with motivation. It takes self-discipline to do those things. You see that? So anybody who has mastered the art of execution and self-discipline, there is nothing on earth that human being cannot achieve. Nothing. Because they have conquered self and they operate from a higher realm of manifestation that will change the way they achieve as far as life is concerned. So move from motivation to self-discipline and move from procrastination to execution. And you will see a quick change in your results without even really, There are many people complaining about they are not making more money. If they just change procrastination to execution, motivation to discipline, their income will increase. Why? Because income is a product of systems. The ability to make money, keep money, and multiply money is a product of systems. It doesn't happen overnight. And the foundation of wealth creation system is self-discipline and execution. Go and check every great person on earth. They are crazy when it comes to how they lead themselves and how they execute. They are crazy when it comes to how they maneuver certain things for the sake of the greater good that they're looking at doing.
You are listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola, showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.
Wow. Honestly, you have given us a condensed version of how to succeed in business. This is just absolutely, and all I can say is thank you so much for your time, because it is an investment. And I know that my listeners and my followership, they would be really grateful on reflection that they were able to listen to this episode. So when we now talk
Absolutely.
about the spin-off of the things that you've done, it now would make absolute sense. And I am so grateful that I have done what I've never done before. I have done unscripted. I have just really worked with what I felt on the table. And I literally, because people listen to me, they know she's quite open. I literally panicked before I went on to say, what am I doing? I can say, because we've gone down that road, is Holy Spirit help me. And he certainly has.
Absolutely.
So this for me has been a real eye-opener. I have gone away with a lot. I know my listeners have gone away with a lot. And I also want to say thank you for saying that you will come back to talk about the I would call the harvest of the seed of all the things, because there are also a lot of nuggets that I deliberately did not touch on that we would now unpack. And for my listeners, we will be going down the road of strategy, because there's no way we will have conversation with you and we won't be talking about business. I purposely did not talk about your frameworks, because you've got 10, there may be more, but I know you've got 10 frameworks, and I'm looking at them. I'm going through and thinking, wow. So you talked about mastery. So we will go into more depth about the mastery. We will go into more depth about transition, because I'm very hot on transition. How were you able to transition from where you started from? Because sometimes people say it's because of where I started, that's why I can't get to where I'm going. And that's why I needed that foundation. How were you able to transition from where you were to now being a global influencer, in the sense of impacting people across? I can't remember the figures now, but I think I was reading the latest article that came out, where you were classed one of the 100 coaches in Africa. And there's a bit of synopsis of the number of awards you've got. So those are the things now that for me would give foundation to when we start talking about that. So thank you for also taking time out to say that you would do that. And this is what people are paying lots of money for. So people, my tribe, you better make sure you take it, and not just you execute. That's the key word for me today. You execute.
Absolutely.
So on that note, I would say thank you so much. And we will be back for part 2, which I have whet our appetite for. So thank you. Do you have any final thoughts before we shut today down?
Thank you so much. It was a great conversation with you, and thank you for, asking me questions that are important, especially to me. It's not every day that I get to sit on interviews that are professionally driven and faith driven at the same time. I love those kind of interviews because they put me in that spot where I get to be complete the way I am. I have appeared on hundreds of media platforms, but it's always too corporate but it's not every day. Where I love platforms where I'm interviewed and my faith is at the center of it all, because I have no shame about it. I have no doubt about it. I live, and everything I do in business, career, everything I do is for his pleasure. And it's also special every time that I get to have this opportunity. And thank you for giving me that privilege. And of course, I'm looking forward to the second part of this, where we get to talk more on the business part, the strategy part, and the money making part of everything that we do, and of course, which is important for the community, and of course for the Christendom as a whole, because God is very intentional at raising people that will stand as pillars and advancing the gospel, and He needs them equipped, standard, and of course, critical players in the industries, and of course in the economy. And that can only happen when our people, our believers, are educated, they are trained, and of course they are empowered for that which God wants to do. And of course, looking forward to that. And I'm believing that through this, every single person that will listen to this will be blessed, will be challenged, and of course will be quickened by the Holy Spirit, to do things I've never done before, for their own good, and of course for the benefit of the society. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to Unleash Your Creativity with Omosola, showcasing creativity in its many dimensions.